Hello, curious minds. Welcome to your biology journey with Synapse. Today, we are diving into diversity in living organisms, focusing on the basis of classification. Have you ever wondered how scientists organize the millions of different life forms on Earth? We'll explore the fundamental characteristics like cell structure, body organization, and mode of nutrition that help us group them. Get ready to embark on an exciting learning adventure, starting from the basics and going all the way to advanced concepts. Let's begin with the basics. Understanding how we group living things makes the vast world of biology much simpler. Imagine trying to find a specific book in a library where everything is just piled up randomly. Impossible, right? That's why we classify living organisms. With millions of different species, from tiny bacteria to giant whales, it would be incredibly hard to study them individually without a system. Classification helps us organize and understand the relationships between them, grouping them based on shared similarities and distinct differences. This systematic approach makes studying the diverse forms of life much easier and more logical. So, what are these main characteristics that scientists use to group organisms? Firstly, we look at their cell structure. Is it a simple cell without a true nucleus, called prokaryotic, or a complex one with a true nucleus and other compartments, called eukaryotic? Secondly, body organization. Is the organism made of just one cell, making it unicellular, or many cells working together, making it multicellular? And finally, mode of nutrition. Does it make its own food, like a plant, autotrophic, or does it get food by eating other organisms, like animals, heterotrophic? These basic questions help us create the broadest categories. Time to check your understanding. Here are 3 quick questions based on what we've just learned. Take a moment to think about them. Question 1. What is the main reason for classifying organisms? Question 2. Give one difference between a prokaryotic and a eukaryotic cell. And question 3. How do autotrophs obtain their food? Jot down your answers and see how well you've grasped the foundational concepts. Ready to go a little deeper? Now, let's explore these classification bases in more detail and understand their significance. The systematic grouping of organisms has a rich history, with Carolus Linnaeus often celebrated as the father of taxonomy for his pioneering work. He laid the groundwork for how we name and classify species. At its core, biological classification starts with identifying fundamental characteristics. The most basic distinction is often the cell structure itself, followed by how these cells are organized into a body, and then how the organism obtains its nutrition. These initial criteria help us make the broadest and most important divisions within the tree of life, reflecting deep evolutionary relationships. Let's zoom in on cell structure and body organization. Prokaryotic cells are simpler, lacking a true nucleus and membrane-bound organelles. Think of bacteria as prime examples. In contrast, eukaryotic cells are more complex, possessing a true nucleus and specialized membrane-bound compartments like mitochondria. All plants, animals, and fungi are made of eukaryotic cells. This prokaryotic-eukaryotic divide is the first major split in life. Then, considering body organization, unicellular organisms consist of just a single cell, like amoeba, where that one cell performs all life functions. Multicellular organisms, like humans or trees, are made of many cells, which often specialize and work together, allowing for greater complexity and division of labor. Next, let's explore the diverse mode of nutrition. Organisms that can synthesize their own food are called autotrophic. Most plants are photoautotrophs, using sunlight for photosynthesis. Some bacteria are chemoautotrophs, using chemical energy. On the other hand, heterotrophic organisms obtain food by consuming other organisms. Animals typically exhibit holozoic nutrition, meaning they ingest solid food. Fungi are saprophytic, feeding on dead organic matter, playing a crucial role as decomposers. Understanding these nutritional strategies helps us place organisms into different ecological roles and classification groups. Now, for some medium-level challenges. Question 1. Who is considered the father of taxonomy? Question 2. Explain the key difference in cell structure that forms a basis for classification. Question 3. Give an example of a unicellular eukaryotic organism. Question 4. How do chemosynthetic organisms obtain food? And finally, question 5. Differentiate between holozoic and saprophytic modes of nutrition. Pause the video if you need more time to formulate your answers. Ready to push your understanding further? Let's delve into the evolutionary implications and broader systems of classification. The characteristics we use for classification are not arbitrary, they reflect deep evolutionary history. The fundamental distinction between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells represents an ancient evolutionary divergence, with prokaryotes generally considered more primitive. The transition to eukaryotic cells, which are larger and more complex, was a crucial step in the evolution of life. Similarly, the shift from unicellular to multicellular body organization marked another significant evolutionary leap, enabling cell specialization, larger body sizes, and the development of complex tissues and organs. The mode of nutrition also reflects fundamental metabolic strategies that have evolved over billions of years to acquire energy and nutrients, shaping ecological roles and relationships within ecosystems. Let's see how these bases apply to R. H. Whittaker's widely accepted 1969 five-kingdom classification. The kingdom, Monera, includes all prokaryotic, unicellular organisms, exhibiting diverse modes of nutrition. Protista comprises eukaryotic, unicellular organisms, also with varied nutritional strategies. Fungi are eukaryotic, mostly multicellular, except yeast, and are heterotrophic, specifically saprophytic, acting as decomposers. Plantae includes eukaryotic, multicellular organisms that are primarily autotrophic, performing photosynthesis. Finally, Animalia consists of eukaryotic, multicellular organisms that are heterotrophic, typically holozoic, meaning they ingest their food. This system beautifully illustrates how cell structure, body organization, and nutrition underpin major biological divisions. These classification characteristics are not isolated, and they are profoundly interconnected. For instance, complex multicellularity, with its specialized tissues and organs, is almost exclusively found in eukaryotic organisms, as their advanced cellular machinery supports such complexity. However, the biological world also presents fascinating complexities. Take Euglena, a unicellular eukaryote, which can be both autotrophic, performing photosynthesis, and heterotrophic, consuming food. Colonial organisms like volvox represent an intriguing intermediate step, where cells live together but lack true tissue differentiation, bridging the gap between unicellular and multicellular forms. Understanding these interconnections and exceptions helps us appreciate the intricate web of life and trace evolutionary pathways more accurately. It's time for some hard-level thinking. Question 1. Why is cell structure considered the most fundamental basis for classifying organisms? Question 2. How does the evolution from unicellular to multicellular organization impact the mode of nutrition? Question 3. Explain how R. H. Whittaker used mode of nutrition to distinguish between fungi, plantae, and animalia. Question 4. Give an example of an organism that exhibits both autotrophic and heterotrophic modes of nutrition. Question 5. Discuss the evolutionary significance of the development of eukaryotic cells from prokaryotic ones. Question 6. Why are Monera placed at the base of the five-kingdom classification system? And finally, question 7. What challenges might arise when classifying organisms based solely on these three criteria? Take your time to construct comprehensive answers. Excellent work so far. Now, for the ultimate challenge. We'll delve into the cutting-edge aspects of classification, historical shifts, and real-world applications. The journey of biological classification has evolved dramatically. Initially, scientists like Linnaeus relied heavily on observable morphological traits to group organisms. However, with advancements in molecular biology, modern classification has shifted towards phylogenetic relationships, aiming to group organisms based on their evolutionary history and genetic relatedness. DNA and RNA sequencing have revolutionized this field, revealing previously unseen genetic connections and refining our understanding of deep evolutionary splits. These molecular insights confirm that fundamental characteristics like cell structure, body organization, and nutrition are indeed strong indicators of shared ancestry, but they also provide the precision to resolve ambiguities and establish more accurate evolutionary trees. Let's dive deeper into cellular architecture. Prokaryotes, including bacteria and archaea, are characterized by a single circular chromosome, the absence of a true nucleus, and lack of membrane-bound organelles. Eukaryotes, in contrast, possess multiple linear chromosomes housed within a true nucleus, along with specialized membrane-bound organelles like mitochondria and chloroplasts. The endosymbiotic theory elegantly explains the origin of these crucial eukaryotic organelles, proposing that ancient prokaryotic cells were engulfed by other cells, forming symbiotic relationships that eventually led to the mitochondria and chloroplasts we see today. This pivotal event was fundamental for the evolution of complex eukaryotic life forms, and even differences in genetic organization, like the presence of introns and exons, further distinguish major biological groups. Beyond the simple unicellular versus multicellular distinction, body organization in the animal kingdom showcases a spectrum of complexity. We start with the cellular level, seen in sponges, where cells aggregate but lack true tissues. Then comes the tissue level, as in cnidarians like jellyfish, where cells organize into distinct tissues for specific functions. Organ-level organization, found in flatworms, involves tissues combining to form organs. The highest level is the organ system level, characteristic of annelids to vertebrates, where organs work together in integrated systems. Further classification criteria include the number of germ layers, diploblastic versus triploblastic, the presence and type of column, body cavity acoelomate, pseudocoelomate, coelomate, and segmentation, all of which reflect significant evolutionary advancements, allowing for greater functional efficiency, mobility, and adaptability to diverse environments. Nutritional diversity is a cornerstone of ecological roles. Photoautotrophs harness light energy, like plants and cyanobacteria, forming the base of most food webs. Chemoautotrophs, such as certain bacteria, derive energy from chemical reactions, often thriving in extreme environments like deep-sea vents. Heterotrophs obtain organic compounds from others, but their strategies vary widely. Saprotrophs, like fungi, are crucial decomposers, recycling nutrients. Parasites live on or in a host, deriving nutrients, often at the host's expense. Holozoic feeders, like most animals, ingest solid food, encompassing herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, and detritivores. Interestingly, mixotrophs, like Euglena or carnivorous plants, combine both autotrophic and heterotrophic methods, showcasing incredible adaptive flexibility and blurring traditional lines, highlighting the complexity and ingenuity of life's energy-gathering strategies. Challenge your mind with these advanced questions. Question 1. Discuss how the endosymbiotic theory profoundly impacted our understanding of eukaryotic cell evolution and its implications for classification. Question 2. Beyond unicellular and multicellular, describe the different levels of body organization found in the animal kingdom, providing an example for each. Question 3. Compare and contrast photoautotrophy and chemoautotrophy, highlighting their ecological significance. Question 4. Explain how the presence or absence of a true column serves as a significant basis for classifying animals, referencing different coelomic states. Question 5. How have molecular phylogenetic techniques, such as rRNA sequencing, challenged and refined traditional classification systems based on morphological characteristics? Let's continue with the remaining advanced questions. Question 6. Elaborate on the concept of mixotrophy in organisms, providing specific examples and discussing its adaptive advantages. Question 7. In the context of biotechnology, how does understanding the classification based on cell structure and mode of nutrition of microorganisms, like bacteria and fungi, contribute to applications such as bioremediation or antibiotic production? Question 8. Discuss the evolutionary pressures that might have led to the transition from a cellular level of organization to an organ system level. Question 9. Analyze the criteria used by Carl Woese to propose the three-domain system and how it differs from Whittaker's five-kingdom classification, particularly regarding prokaryotes. And finally, question 10. Imagine discovering a new organism. Describe a systematic approach using cell structure, body organization, and mode of nutrition to place it within a broad classification framework, considering potential ambiguities. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the basis of biological classification. We've journeyed from simple cell types to complex body plans and diverse nutritional strategies, understanding how these fundamental characteristics help us organize and make sense of life's incredible diversity. For more such engaging and in-depth learning experiences, make sure to visit synapse.omaps.in. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for continuous learning. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep growing. See you in the next session.